the phone felt suddenly heavy, a slick, cold slab against my ear. Mom's voice, usually a steady and calming anchor, was trembling, each word frayed at the edges with a panic I'd never heard before. "Lily, Beta, your father just called." There was a sharp, shaky intake of breath. He canceled your entire wedding." I froze. Right there, in the plush, perfumed silence of the bridal boutique, standing on a velvet-draped podium, I turned to stone. The world didn't just stop, it shattered. I was half-zipped into the exquisite satin gown, the one I'd been secretly sketching in the margins of my notebook since I was 18. The fabric, which moments before had felt like a second skin of pure promise, now felt like a suffocating shroud. The air, once sparkling with excited chatter, grew thick and silent. The consultant, Anya, who had been beaming just seconds ago as she fastened the tiny pearl buttons, now stared at my reflection in the full-length mirror, her eyes wide with horrified pity, her hands hovering uselessly near the delicate veil she had just placed so carefully in my hair. All I could hear was the ragged sound of my own breath, and Mom's soft, defeated weeping on the other end of the line. "He said he's not funding this circus," she whispered, the word circus tasting like ash in her mouth. "He already called the Grand Victoria. The coordinator, Sarah, she confirmed it. It's done." The words didn't just land, they detonated. It was a physical blow, a visceral cracking of glass deep inside my chest, each shard a fragment of a future now broken. He canceled it. The venue, the flowers, the food, the life Ethan and I had been meticulously planning for a year, he had dismantled it all with one phone call, without a warning, without a single conversation, without even asking me. "Hi, I'm Lily, and I'm 27 years old. By profession, I'm a civil engineer. I build bridges and design structures meant to withstand immense pressure." The irony wasn't lost on me. "I'm engaged to a man named Ethan, who is the human equivalent of a safe harbor. He's the kind of person who believes true kindness is the ultimate strength, not a sign of weakness. We've been together for 4 years, and in that time, he has never once tried to build a wall around me, only a foundation beneath us. He treats me like a partner, an equal in every decision, big or small, a teammate." But, to my father, Richard Hayes, the concept of partnership has always been synonymous with ownership. Growing up, Dad paid for everything. It wasn't just generosity, it was a transaction. The college tuition, the rent for my chic downtown apartment, the sleek car I drove, even the Italian leather sofa in my living room. He presented it all with a smile, but the price tag was attached with invisible, unbreakable strings. Every dollar he gave was another knot, another layer of permission he granted himself to dictate who I was supposed to be, who I should marry, what life I should lead. I was his obedient daughter, the well-mannered accessory in the portrait of his perfect family. I didn't argue, I didn't date until after graduation, and I never ever questioned his advice, which was really just his control, meticulously dressed as fatherly care. And then I met Ethan. My father never liked him. He found him too humble, too average, as he'd sneered once, swirling an expensive amber whiskey in a crystal glass. "A man with no ambition, Lily. You deserve someone who can match our lifestyle, our social standing. Not a man who is perfectly content driving a used Honda Civic." When Ethan proposed on a wind-swept beach at sunset, my yes was immediate, a burst of pure, unadulterated joy. But the moment the diamond was on my finger, a cold dread settled in my stomach. My nervousness wasn't about spending my life with Ethan. It was about the inevitable confrontation with my father. The first battle happened 3 months before the wedding. at our traditional Sunday brunch, a stifling affair where Dad held court and made family announcements while Mom smiled her tight, practiced smile. I gathered every ounce of my courage, cleared my throat, and said, my voice only trembling slightly, Ethan and I have set a date. It's going to be next June at the Grand Victoria. Mom gasped with feigned surprise and clapped her hands, her eyes darting nervously towards my father. My younger brother Sam offered me a small, supportive grin from across the table. But Dad didn't move. He just slowly lowered his copy of the Financial Times and looked at me over the rim of his porcelain coffee cup. His eyes weren't angry. They were calculating, cold, and utterly still. He didn't say a word. He just took a long, slow sip, and in that silence, I felt the first thread of my dream wedding begin to snap. The silence that followed my announcement was heavier than any I had ever known. It was my father who broke it, his voice deceptively calm. Who's paying for it? I met his gaze, my own steady despite the frantic beating of my heart. We are, I said, my voice clear and firm. I gestured between Ethan and I. Ethan and I have been saving for over a year. We have a budget and we're sticking to it. A slow, condescending smirk spread across his face, the kind that never failed to make my stomach clench, the kind that meant, you are a child and you'll regret this later. Sweetheart, he said, leaning back in his chair as if addressing a naive intern. Real weddings, the kind this family has, cost real money. You might want to reconsider before you embarrass yourselves in front of everyone we know. Ethan, ever the peacemaker, gently interjected, his voice respectful but firm. Sir, we appreciate your concern, but we've got it covered. We've planned everything meticulously. My father didn't even look at him. He simply waved a dismissive hand in his direction, a gesture so insulting that it made me flinch. I'm saving you from yourselves, he stated as if delivering a final, unassailable verdict. You'll thank me one day. That was the first blatant warning shot across our bow. I felt the threat in his words, but in my wildest dreams, I didn't know how far he would actually go to prove his point. The real siege began 2 weeks later. It started with a single, innocuous email with the subject line, Wedding Photography Inquiry. Our photographer, a lovely artist we'd been so excited to book, wrote, Hi, Lily. I received a call from your father, Richard. He informed the event has been postponed indefinitely due to family financial difficulties. I'm so sorry to hear that and hope everything is okay. Family finances? The words felt like a violation. Then, like a line of dominoes tipped by his invisible hand, the others fell. The florist, the caterer, the DJ, all sent near identical cancellation emails, each one a carbon copy of the last, all parroting the same phrase, your father called. When I showed Ethan the growing pile of digital rejections, the color drained from his face. Lily, he whispered, the hurt in his eyes morphing into cold, hard understanding. He's not just disapproving. He's actively sabotaging us. I confronted my father that very night, my hands shaking with a potent mix of heartbreak and rage. He didn't even bother to deny it. I did what any reasonable parent would do when their child is making a monumental mistake, he said with a casual shrug, not even looking up at his newspaper. You're rushing into something you clearly can't afford. Better a canceled wedding now than a failed marriage in a year. Dad, this isn't about money, I snapped, my voice cracking.
It's always about money, he replied coolly, finally lowering the paper. His eyes were flat and certain. You just don't see it yet. And with that, he stood and walked away, leaving me standing there, my argument evaporating into the oppressive air of his study. Then came the public humiliation, a new layer of cruelty I hadn't anticipated. He took to Facebook, posting a picture of me from years ago in my college graduation gown, a symbol of an achievement he could still claim as his own influence. The caption read, So proud of my daughter Lily for learning responsibility the hard way. Sometimes disappointment is life's greatest teacher. Hashtag tough love. The comments poured in from his circle of friends and distant relatives. A wise father raises a wise daughter. She's lucky to have a dad who keeps her grounded. Grounded. That was his favorite euphemism, the word he used to sanitize the raw, ugly truth of his need for absolute control. I stopped going to family events after that. The pretense was too painful to maintain. Even my mother, when she called, would whisper, "Just let him feel involved, honey. You know how he is. He means well." But then he went too far. He crossed a line from which I knew there would be no return. A week before the original date, my father stood in our apartment holding an envelope like a winning card. "I found a cheaper venue," he said, tossing it down. "The community center on 5th. 50 guests, buffet style. More your speed." I watched Ethan's jaw tighten, but he stayed silent. Dad smiled like he'd offered salvation. "See? You don't need to pretend." That's when I understood completely. This wasn't about money. It was about proving I couldn't stand without him. He didn't know I'd been preparing for this moment for years. After college, I'd started designing small residential projects online. One client became 10, then 50. By 26, I was running a profitable firm under a different name. My engineering salary went to savings. Every client payment built my freedom. The venue he canceled, I owned it. 6 months earlier, I'd bought Magnolia Terrace, an old manor I was restoring as both business investment and secret wedding venue. I wanted to build something beautiful, literally from the ground up. So when Mom called crying about the cancellation, I didn't shed tears. I smiled. "It's okay, Mom. Let Dad think that." Ethan knew the plan. We went silent online, ignored the gossip, kept preparing quietly. Dad bragged about saving his daughter from a mistake, told my uncle, "Sometimes you protect kids from their own stupidity." I let him. The night before the wedding, I invited them over. "So," Dad asked smugly, "postponing until next year?" I opened my laptop. "Actually, we're getting married tomorrow at Magnolia Terrace." He frowned. "That place? That's mine," I finished. "I bought it, the deeds under Arcline Designs." He blinked. "You own the venue?" I showed him the documents, ownership papers, profit statements. For the first time, he was speechless. "You make this much?" I smiled faintly. "You taught me to build control from the ground up. I just learned to build mine without hurting anyone." The next day was perfect. Golden light through magnolias, soft music, quiet laughter. Mom cried walking me down the aisle. Dad sat silently in the back, watching the daughter he thought he controlled walk into her new life. Later, under string lights, he approached. "You didn't need to prove anything." "I did. Not for you, for me." 3 weeks later, he called, voice softer. "You were right. You don't need me to make you respectable." I smiled. "I never did. I just needed you to see that." Sometimes those who think they hold the strings realize too late you were never the puppet. You were the builder. True independence isn't bought. It's built, brick by brick, choice by choice. If you've ever been underestimated, remember, the best revenge isn't shouting. It's success they never saw coming.